Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Centric. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are crime dramas. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about The Gentleman, Season 1, Episode 4. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So, I didn't know where that opening was going to go. I actually mistook that property, the Bassington property, to be Eddie's family's property, but it's like, yeah, he starts coming, because I thought like the whole, I was like, no, but they don't have like a museum situation set up in their place, and then stuff started popping off, because I thought we were going to do an immediately res type of thing of, okay, we're starting at the end, and then we're going to rewind to the beginning of all these people and witnesses are around to like some crazy stuff going down, but it's just the 8th Lord Bassington going nuts and firing off a gun, and just being like, oh, you lizards aren't going to be in here, and you're like, where is this going? And then he drops dead, I guess of a heart attack or old age. I'm like, that's wild. We didn't get to spend that much time with him. He just dropped dead. Then at his funeral, he wanted to have a casket. He has a little window for his casket so that while he's dead, his casket is buried vertically so that he can always be staring at his property. Which I'm like, that is some wild shit. I'm sure there have been rich people who've decided to have different being frozen, Isn't that a rumor, or is that true about like people like Walt Disney who froze themselves? Well, once again, isn't it like his severed head that's frozen or something, so that technology can eventually like catch up and be able to resurrect him or something like that? It's like, you're powerful and have enough connections, you can make anything happen. And it's just like, I mean, this ain't that weird. I mean, when in comparison to that, but it's still like, who does that? It's like, that's disturbing. But obviously, Eddie's trying to contend with the ever-growing issue of how do I make the glasses operation enough money so they leave me alone, leave me and my family estate alone, especially now that Susie wants to expand to like where they keep their horses and stuff. So it's like, no, we're not going to do that. So he's trying to find new property for them to expand their operations, or at least move from his property to someone else's. And it turns out it's going to be the Bassington property, because Max, who I thought he was younger than what he, I guess, appeared to be, because he's supposed to be roughly around Freddie's age, because they went to school together, like acting school together. So, but because I was about to say, like, his dad looked extremely, extremely old for him to, because he looked like, to me, when we first introduced him, I'm like, he looks like he could be a teenager, but then when you get closer, I'm like, oh, he's years older than what he just looked youngish, but I think he's just older, way older than I thought he was. Either way, it was actually Rosie who actually acted as the introduction for Eddie, which I think it's so interesting that Rosie just ends up kind of being in his life, and it's like, there's history there, obviously, but we didn't really go into that too much back in episode 2, but kind of implying like, right, there's a history, like she used to come over to their house and stuff, but once again, she's an actual princess and everything, but like, wasn't it in Belgium that she's actually a princess? It was somewhere with a B. I can't remember that she's actually like next in line to become like, she is like actual royalty. But either way, when it's all said and done, Max is really okay with the whole notion of all of this, but he needs a favor. There's some dirt that some guy named Frank has on him, and it's like, cool, you deal with this situation for me, you bring back the evidence, I get to destroy it. Well, after verifying that it is the evidence, I'll destroy it, and we're all good, we're golden, I'll take over this whole glass operation thing. Which, obviously, it's a thing of Eddie getting so, like, counting his chickens before they hatch type of situation, that he's so trying to remedy this situation so quickly, whatever way, he's kind of jumping into a situation without really vetting it enough, which is something Susie was kind of getting on him about. Of like, right, we and ourselves don't really jump into business with someone until we do months of, okay, let's look into this, because they don't want someone's skeletons in their closet coming to screw up their operation. So you don't want to be screwed over because of who you got in bed with, because you didn't do your due diligence to find out what skeletons they have in their closet. So Eddie ends up meeting with Frank. Frank is at a restaurant because he's trying to pay off a debt to some other dude, but that leads to a tussle, which I love the end result of it. They're just both sitting on the floor. Frank ran away with the money, and as Eddie's talking to Susie. She wants to talk to the guy, and he's like, "Okay, I'll give you the address." Susie says she's going to meet you there. You should have told me you work with Susie. It's like that always ends up being kind of a major factor in this. Going forward, you need to just drop Susie's name. You need to drop the Glass name whenever possible. But I guess it's this weird balancing act where it's like he doesn't want to have to resort to that. I guess he just assumes he doesn't need to. It's like, right, it's just me. Because he, especially this case, he thought was like, oh, it's going to be an easy peasy thing. I pay off a dude, I get the evidence, and we're all easy peasy lemon squeezies about it. But nah, it's not that kosher. So I think it's like I said, it's just a rule of thumb going forward. Just drop Susie's name. But I'm sure there's going to be one time he does, and it's going to fuck him over, I'm sure. But they go over. Turns out Frank's a journalist. His reputation was kind of destroyed because he was pushed out because he would always spill the truth about people. But the problem is now that oligarchs are kind of in control and control the media and get to determine what gets publicized and what doesn't, kind of got shafted. He hasn't been buried in the physical sense, but more in the metaphorical sense. I think he's probably just scrounging on the outskirts, trying to do whatever he can. So he's, I guess, kind of a scummy reporter now where it's like, oh, I still do my due diligence. I get a hold of this evidence, but I use it to blackmail people rather than doing due diligence of like, he's just trying to make a quick buck. I wonder, he was leaving with his family. I wonder, was that because shit hit the fan? So it's like, well, stuff popped off. I'm going to take the money and just bounce. It's like, no. You're going to hold up your end of the deal. So not only do they get the money, they also get Frank and drag him back to Max. And the whole conversation is, aren't you going to look in at evidence? Which Eddie was like, no, I'm not going to. Which I'm like, you're probably going to want to. Because immediately my brain goes to, the number one nasty thing you're like, there's plenty of nasty things in the world. It's like he could be involved in human trafficking or something like that. But then immediately, like, my mind goes to, like, one of the most egregious, disgusting things you can be, and then some pedo shit. So I'm like, he was more so allocating this being dirt about his father, but then, because he knew it would kind of destroy his reputation, because apparently he's in a big Hollywood movie, and he doesn't want to screw that up, which you're like, he never actually explained what role he was playing. Like, is he even a major character in the movie? But it's like, I guess it's irrelevant. It's like, you're going to screw up my chances to be in a big not, I was about to say action, but a big, like, Hollywood movie. But then, like, Frank was making a point of, did you not look at the evidence? It wasn't even about his father. It's about him. So now it's like, once again, we go back to the point of doing your due diligence. Because it's like, okay, so you lied and said whatever this fuck shit is, it's about your dad, had nothing to do with you. Now we find out this ain't even about your dad. This is about you specifically. He's like, whatever it is, I'm mixed up in. It's not that crazy. Some people might look at it a certain way. I'm like, that's why I was like, I'm getting weird vibes. I'm like, what is this going to be? Like, once again, I'm kind of getting these weird. I'm like, are we talking pedo shit? It's like, no, it's, I can't say worse. It's something maybe just as shitty. I guess it varies from person to person. Like, bad shit to me is just bad shit. I guess, there's severity between some stuff, but like, this is some bad stuff with some other bad stuff. So we find out at first, it's like, oh, he has a whole bunch of Nazi memorabilia, which I'm like, okay, sure. I'm like, is this really what Frank had on you? I'm like, you having a whole bunch of like Hitler's art and stuff. It's like, sure, whatever. There are people who collect, Nazi memorabilia, sure, whatever. And then you kind of find out, oh, cool, your prized possession is you somehow got your hands on Hitler's testicle. And he kind of, and especially because he was starting to talk that way of like, oh, come on, like, oh, look at the beauty of Hitler's art, which, and he's like, it's average. He's like, you're only saying that because you had the context of separate, the art from the artist type of situation. It's like, yeah, it's hard to do that when we're fucking talking about Hitler. You don't, one of the most evil human beings in existence. It's like, it's one of those things where it's like, I forgot what I've watched before that's kind of referenced, like, wasn't it like highway systems? Or there's something that it's, I'm sure there are quite a few things that are prevalent nowadays that are just everyday things that were started by Nazis. There's plenty of things. Like, I won't go into specifics because I don't want to be inaccurate, but like there's plenty of I won't specify any company because I won't say any company's name because I don't want to be put in some liable situation because once again I'm ignorant enough on history, but there's certain companies that have a history associated with Nazis. They sure as hell do their best to stay away from it. Understandable, sadly you just can't change the history of that type of stuff. But I want to say it was like freeways or highways or something. There's something road related that Nazis had a part in making, and it's just kind of like, yeah, we can acknowledge that. We don't have to celebrate. It's like we can just always, acknowledge that part of history, but not have to celebrate. Like, yeah, we can admit, like, hey, Hitler did something. I don't know. Like, Hitler's not the person you need to be championing. Like, oh, let's ignore the bad stuff he done and focus on the man and his art. He was a true artiste. Because in my head, I'm thinking, like, well, we know Max is kind of a weirdo artist, so it's like, once again, as Rosie put it, like, he's the epitome of, like, a starving artist. I guess it's like, you put all that in there, and when he really starts talking up, like, oh, they're not that, and you're like, okay, so now we're leaning into the neo-Nazi shit. So it's like, yeah, you fit the bill, blonde hair, wasn't focused on his eyes, but he probably has blue eyes. It's like, white, start painting a picture here, so, yeah. So that's what he's really worried about. It's like, oh, I don't want anyone, talking, looking at my collection as kind of an example of me being a Nazi. He's like, oh yeah, you'd be super busted for that. So that's what this was all about. Initially, Eddie was kind of backing away from the business, but Susan's like, no. Like, I don't get too caught up in what... I don't know if she was saying that fictitiously or kind of jokingly. Like I think initially it's the thing of she doesn't care what her business partners are into as long as it doesn't blow up in their face. But this probably would have caused some issues and people would have looked into stuff, which would have meant her business got looked into. So I think she was being a little fictitious about it, but maybe she was being sincere about just kind of like not caring. Like, no, don't speak so quickly for me, Eddie. It might have just been her being sarcastic. But yeah, shit popped off. The lady that's working with him, which at first I was like, is that his mom? It's like, no, I think that's just like the woman that serves him. Like, that might be like his version of Jeff. But she stabs Frank. Stuff pops off. She starts firing off shots. Eddie throws a grenade at one point in time. A dog comes in that seems like he's about to attack, but he's so captivated. Because I want to say... Oh, it was Frank who busted the jar with Hitler's right testicle over Max's head, and then the dog came over and gobbled up the testicles. I'm like, okay, that sequence of events just fucking happened. And I also appreciate how this show... And maybe this is just a Guy Ritchie thing, because I'm like, in retrospect, I don't think I've talked about this. I don't know if I've seen any Guy Ritchie movies. Nothing against him. It's like, as you know, I don't watch a lot of movies, but I'm like, I don't think I've seen any Guy Ritchie movies. I know some of the ones he's made. Like, didn't he do Snatch? Once again, I know The Gentleman. I want to say, I know he did the Aladdin live action adaptation back in 2019. I know he did that, but I don't think even that I've never seen. But this might be the first, like, Guy Ritchie thing I've seen. Like, I feel like I might have... Like I said, if Snatch is one of his movies, I think I've seen bits and pieces of it. I don't think I've seen the full thing. I don't know. I think there's probably... Like, I'd have to look through his filmography. I don't know his filmography enough to say definitively I haven't seen anything, but I feel like I haven't. This might be, like I said, the first, like... all the way through, because I'm only on episode 4, but I'm obviously going to see this all the way through. But this might be the first thing of Guy Ritchie's I've seen all the way through, like, if at all, so. But my point before I went on that diatribe was, like, I like how they do the action sequences like that, where it's like, okay, you see the aftermath first, and then we rewind and kind of give you, like, a little montage of what happened. I don't know, just from an aesthetic choice. I don't know if that's like that's like Guy Ritchie style, And I talk about it a little bit before, but I do love the whole, like, stuff written in yellow on the screen, like they're kind of like, it's like, oh, like, do this, and this, like, people are making their point, it being written on the screen like that. I really like that. Like I said, that might just be a Guy Ritchie aesthetic across a lot of stuff. It might be a blend of his aesthetic mixed with him kind of do something a little different with the gentleman. Once again, I don't know his style enough to really comment on that. I like that aesthetic a lot, is all I'm saying. So Felix and his boys had to kind of come clean things up. I guess we're just going to let Frank, like, you get to keep the money and you just get to disappear, so whatever. I don't know if he's going to leave permanently, but he was leaving with his wife and daughter, so just kind of be on your way, I guess. Which I love that all the while Eddie was doing all of this, trying to find a quick solution to all of this stuff, it kind of turns out his mom was making moves on her own because she's tired of Eddie kind of being mixed up in things, and it's like, right, if I can do something to help my son with this situation and make it so that he doesn't have to dive deeper, because Eddie doesn't want to get her involved. He already got Freddie involved, which Freddie's dealing with that in his own way, where it's like, well, yeah, I might have screwed up once or twice or 3 times, whatever the case may be. Now I'm kind of being kept on the outs. It's like, yeah, but it's also Eddie feeling guilt because it's like, yes, you are a screw up, but also you are his brother. And the last words from your dad was, hey, look after your brother. He can't survive without you. And that's becoming more and more apparent. But it's also like, I just don't, for our mom's sake too, I don't want to drag you deeper into this. So I want to kind of protect you from all this. Like, if I've got to shoulder this, I'll shoulder it. But I don't want you to end up dead because you've been in some very precarious situations recently. The last episode was pretty dire and right near the edge of a machete. You know, pretty close to getting hacked to pieces like good old Tony. So, well, you wouldn't have gotten hacked to pieces like that. It would just probably would have been more like a finger or a hand. Probably most likely, well, she did say eye for an eye and type of stuff like that, which would have counted for the hand type of situation when it comes to theft. But either way, wouldn't have been as bad as Tony's circumstances is what I was trying to say. But either way, it's kind of left Freddie feeling a certain way and just kind of feeling lost. It's actually interesting. He has this moment with Jeff where Jeff kind of made this point of, I forgot the exact wording, but he was like, it takes a lucky man to be happy kind of with his station in life or something. It's like basically saying very few people in the world are very happy with what they're doing and where they are in their life. It's just other people are always, you know, you're very lucky if you're able to kind of be content with like life being what it is and who you are and your place in it and everything. And that to me happened very interestingly enough after, like, obviously Jeff is the one that kind of decided to help Sabrina find out a place of, because I'm pretty sure the character's name is Sabrina. I wonder, is it like actually like Serena or something? But I think it's Sabrina. She trying to find an alternative for Susie's business and all that, and ultimately he's the one that kind of suggested, like, oh, one of our nearby neighbors was like Mr. Rokes or something like that. And there's this moment there where they're about to go discuss this with him, and he's like, no, you'll do it because you have these wonderful charms, you're very good with people, and he's like, I'm sure you'll succeed. She's like, really, you think so? He's like, yes. And there's like this longing look in his eyes. I was like, is Jeff in love with her? Has he always been in love? Because we don't know what, like, maybe his connection is through Eddie, Freddie, and Charlotte's dad, and not, you know, maybe there's a connection between the trio and she got with their father instead of Jeff. Like, maybe that's what that is. Or maybe it was only partway after they got together that Jeff has started to feel this certain way about her. And it almost feels like it might be like reciprocal, like she might feel the same way as well. I get that inkling, but it just felt for an instant. And so that conversation he had with Freddie was like in the next scene after that scene, so it makes me feel like there might be something to that. It's like her going over and him just kind of looking away, like, I wish I probably told her how I really feel. Like, I'm getting those vibes. I'm like, interesting. I wasn't expecting that. You know, I don't know whether he just feels like, hey, I'm just to help. I'm here to help look after her family. I'm extra motivated to do it because I do care for these people, but I care for her very much in particular. So maybe she's the main reason why he kind of has such loyalty to this family. I don't know. Just thought that was an interesting potential through line they're kind of setting up there. But aside from that, we also have well, let me finish up there. Because of what she did, it has given them another option, which Eddie couldn't do anything but laugh. He's like, Mom, you wouldn't believe the stuff I had to do in the past 48 hours, and here you are with a solution. And it's like, yeah. I was thinking like that might cause an issue later on, because it's like, right, she's completely unaware of what Eddie's up to in order to find a new home for the glasses operation. But then it's like, no, it turns out her solution, well, it's not all set in stone because that hasn't been resolved. Like, obviously Susie's got to sit down with the guy and talk to him, stuff like that. But it sets up the stage for it all working out in the end. But we'll see. You know, a lot of shit could just fall apart next episode type of situation, or in between episodes. But yeah, I mean, Obviously, Susie's not too happy about the circumstances getting shot at and stuff like that. But, Eddie does bring up the fact is you do benefit because you have the Bassington, home. It's kind of up for sale. There's no one else in the lineage because Max was the last of that lineage. Not unless there's going to be some secret sibling or lost illegitimate child that pops up type of situation, which there's always room and possibility for that. But they got that, all of the Nazi memorabilia, in paintings and stuff like that. So that's kind of a nice, thing to kind of have lining your pockets as well. You could always sell that for money. So it kind of came up, despite the thing. And obviously Jack comes over and is like, oh man, you took down Nazis. He's like, no, Nazis, singular. It's like, oh, you blew him up with a grenade and stuff like that. So pretty impressive work. It's like, Eddie gets shit done. He's a G. And it's like, yeah, he is. So it's like, oh, let's cheers to that. It's like, no, we're not going to cheers to that. It's like, well, cheers to checking the envelope, seeing what's in the envelope. And Jack's like, I have no idea what the fuck that's about. But yeah, once again, a life lesson in the future of you say you're not going to check the envelope. You need to check the envelope because you never know what duplicitous shit might be hidden within. So there's that element. And then finally, we're catching up with Jimmy and Gabrielle. That linking up happened a lot faster than I thought it would. But it makes sense. She's extra motivated. And it's like, oh, they're hanging out. And she wants to see where he works, and he actually takes her there, which I didn't think he actually would, because he's like, nah, it's private access, secret access, and he still took her there. Thought it was interesting, too, because he was like, oh, do you sure you don't want to puff? And she was saying, oh, I don't smoke. I guess that's very ambiguous enough for you to be like, well, I don't smoke, maybe I just stopped smoking, maybe I have tried it before, but she didn't seem like an amateur with it. The way she grabbed it, she took a puff, and it didn't seem like an amateur. It didn't seem like that was her first time. So it seems like she's got experience of that, but once again, maybe I'm reading too much into that. It's not like I'm a professional stoner or anything like that, but it just seemed like there was no typical first puff type of situation. That seemed like someone with some experience. But obviously Jimmy kind of let a little too much out there because he ends up revealing oh, this spot is only one of 12. No, there's 12 other spots, so there's 13 in total. And she's like, what, about this size? He's like, oh no, there's some about the same size and others, there's even some bigger than this. So it's right, she doesn't know their locations. This is Jimmy's wheelhouse here, but maybe he's not even aware of the other locations. He might have, I don't know if his job encompasses all of them, because we've only seen Jimmy at this particular facility. We don't know if he's been at any of the other 12. So, but it's it kind of showcases how large their operation is. So I guess they have to know who they're in business, who Gabrielle and her people. Gabrielle, I keep just saying Gabrielle and her crew, they've got to know they're going up against the glasses and what kind of issues that might bring about. Like I said, I get the feeling they might be competition because they might be weed or marijuana people in the same biz, or like I was also suggesting last episode, they could just be trying to burn all drugs to the ground type of situation, which is not recommended considering weed and burning, so either way, it's going to be interesting to see where all of this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.